everyone, and welcome to Rad Chat here live at UKIO. My name's Jo McNamara and I'm joined by fellow host
Naman Joker Anderson.
So we have two on the sofa, we're switched on. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, so my name's Jason Elliott. I teach diagnostic radiography at Cardiff University and I'm a self-confessed burnout nerd.
Love that. How can I possibly compete with that now? My name is Vafa Taleban and I am a radiographer by background. I did radiography I've been a radiographer since 1995 really. Specialised in MRI and I spent a few years in PACS implementing that as that was coming in 2006. And more latterly I have been doing a little bit of culture change, should we call it that?
Let's call it that.
Let's call it that. I really value connections. I think that the change starts with us and from us. And I have brought that into UKIO today to kind of prompt people to think about becoming more self-aware, how they lead, how to develop their invisible authority, and how to stand for what they really believe in. So that's my bag, really.
Why do cultures need to change?
Oh, right, that's a really interesting question. Because times are changing, right, and we're not keeping up with the changing times. So as I said briefly, I spent 6.5 years as a radiographer in MRI, as a seconded MR radiographer. I was actually amongst the first cohort of people to get my reporting qualification, but I was never allowed to practice it. That for me is culture. I then moved on to the main department and I was part of the PACS implementation team. I was joking in the room, not because I was tech savvy, but because everybody else was afraid of the mouse.
Yeah.
So that's how I landed that position. And I realized that technical trainings are really important, but what was missing was developing people to get ready psychologically and emotionally for the changes that were coming in. So everything that I learned during those days is really the foundation of what I do now, is creating change readiness, which we don't invest in. We just think that we'll bring technologies in and people will fit in and will do it. Jason will tell you that his data will show that there's a huge amount of burnout, and I think it's as a result of a huge amount of uncertainty and ambiguity that we are experiencing in a place of work. You know, I said in there that ambiguity, basically, according to research in neuroscience, our brain processes ambiguity as physical pain.
Right, okay, interesting.
Yeah. Would that go somewhat towards burnout?
We've got a massive cultural problem, which is wonderful in some ways but challenging in other ways, because we're so good at delivering care and we're so interested in caring for ourselves but also our colleagues that we do that at our own expense, and sometimes we don't challenge practices and behaviours within the services that we're part of that are actually unhealthy or harmful in terms of the way that we accept cultural practice, we accept workload that is unsustainable and might impact on us being able to deliver safe and effective care, just because we're concerned about waiting list times, we're concerned about leaving our colleagues short-staffed and maybe them feeling like they're under additional pressure, but also how we discuss that outside of our own little kind of bubbles, whether it's the imaging service, whether it's the radiotherapy service. It's kind of cross-professional that we spend so much time thinking about, I need to be on top of my workload, that we don't think about, actually, am I well enough to be on top of my workload and am I doing it well?
It's really interesting actually, because we've had conversations with other guests who come on the podcast today about the fact that, you know, with AI, with the introduction of more efficient workflows, we can treat or diagnose more patients. But actually, should we be pushing back on that and going, yes, we could have a quicker throughput of patients, but isn't it about giving patients the time to, you know, have some care that actually then means that as workforce, like a lot of us went into these professions because we wanted to care for people, and we're not having time to do that.
Yeah.
And that must contribute to kind of burnout.
Absolutely, and it provides an emotional burden on us that there's this whole concept of moral distress where we feel like we're rushing what we're doing, we're not giving our best because we're kind of squished into these little time boxes, which means then we rush the conversations with patients, we rush the conversations with each other, and that's where the risk of near miss comes in.
Right.
That's where our own mental load comes in, that we're thinking, actually, I'm not doing the job I want to do here because I don't have the time to do it.
Yeah.
And that starts building up. If you start adding the working hours in, any kind of friction over delivering care across a longer period, all of a sudden this is habitual burnout, and it becomes irreparable because our staff who are talking to us in these research projects that I've been working on are saying that they're having kind of the damage is irreparable. You know, they're having full-on physical health effects because this burnout has become habitual, but they find that they don't have the opportunity to talk about it because the culture is limited. We don't know how to be honest with each other and understand ourselves, and this is where Vafa is coming from, where we need to develop this culture where we're honest and we feel safe to talk about things. This kind of concept of psychological safety within our teams is really important.
You know, I think that we talk about these things as concepts, culture as a concept, what can change outside of me for the culture to change, but what we need is to take on board that culture lives inside of us. Culture lives in people. Every time we greet each other, every time we write an email, every time we enter a room, every time we respond to a challenge, we are influencing that culture in a harmful or in a healthy way. So culture isn't this thing that's outside of us. We need to take ownership for changing our leadership style in order to have that imprint on our team and our environment and slowly change the
People
culture.
use that as an excuse a bit, don't they, around, the leadership is wrong. The leadership is wrong.
And I don't want to argue, absolutely. However, when will it ever be right if we don't challenge it? So that's what I'm bringing in here, a simple methodology so that we could have those really difficult conversations but using this methodology that's going to guide us and help us to look at the challenge through a different perspective. For me, I haven't come here to teach anybody anything. It's not about teaching people. Social media is filled with this is culture, this is how you make it better, but it's not happening. Personal development world is a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? People are reading leadership books and management books and culture books, but nothing is changing. So we need to start challenging thoughts. For me, I bring here thought leadership. Right. How do we start thinking differently? How do we start making people feel they belong in the change landscape that's happening? I don't have any experience of AI coming into the trust because I don't work there. I work as a consultant, but I do work with both imaging and allied healthcare professionals up and down the country to help them bring the new technology in without burning their people out. It is possible. I came out of the room really enthused. We had a full room of people, amazing engagement. I'm really grateful to the people who came. And at the end of the session, I said to them, knowing what you know now, how much do you believe, because that belief is the important factor, how much do you believe that culture can change? And would you say 90% were like 5? We had a few 4s, 90% of 5. And that's what we need to do. We need to give people
and that's from a quick interaction.
Trust. It's like 1 hour long interaction, because I didn't tell them what to do. I invited them to think differently about their everyday practices. And that's where the change comes from. That's where the difference is. People don't want to be told how to change. Nobody wants to be told to change, right?
Well, change, the concept is scary for people, isn't it?
So my job is to make change tangible different
Yeah.
people, to take it from that concept level down to something that lives there,
Yeah.
and they
It's
can
about getting out of
implement.
the comfort zone, isn't it? I think when you're in clinical as well, you're always in a comfort zone of your place, what you do. But then if you want something new to come in, new innovation, that's going to push you out.
Yeah.
And how do we change from that idea where we're passengers in change of being participants in change?
Yeah.
Where we change the culture because we want to change the culture and make it more sustainable. How do we change practice and improve our patient care because we want it to be better and more efficient?
Yeah.
Not in terms of time interaction, but in terms of the quality of what patients receive and how we feel we're in control of that rather than kind of chasing after that. You know, sometimes it can quite often feel as a healthcare professional you're not in control of that interaction. You're just rushing through it, and it's the runaway train feeling, isn't it? So how do we change that so we feel like we're owning the situation and we're able to do that well and do it consciously rather than having to do it in a rush?
So, top tips. We often end Rad Chat episodes with top tips, and I'm going to give you different scenarios. So, for a member of staff who's feeling burnt out, what would you suggest they do?
I think there's a combination of honesty, but also seeking support either through your professional body, your trade union, but also seeking support from people that you trust. Go and speak to your GP, go and speak to somebody who understands burnout. If you don't feel like you're getting anywhere in terms of your leadership within your team, there are going to be plenty of other places you can be signposted to, or get in touch with me and I'll try and signpost people as well, because I'm really keen to try and tackle this problem in the workforce.
So I would suggest that you actually study Jason's work first, because my thought at the moment is, do people realize that they're experiencing burnout? Yeah? That is the thought that's going through my head at the moment.
By people when they kind of start to talk about
So
it.
please study his work, have a look to actually familiarize yourself with what the symptoms of burnout are. Because again, we've normalized all of that in the place of work. It's happening, but nobody knows it's happening.
I think actually, and this comes from my own personal experience, within my social circle, we're all mums, we're all full-time working, we run a podcast on the side, but it's almost seen as an elitist, like I'm thriving because I'm almost burnt out, and we've normalised that
Badge
culture.
of honour.
Yeah, it's horrific.
And it's either led by dark humour or by a badge of, look at me, I'm working 150% of my capacity, which it doesn't help you, it doesn't help the people around you that you love, and it doesn't help those people that you care about in your working environment. So learning to understand that you have a capacity, having those honest conversations about those capacities being different, because we're all individuals, but that we're not able to do our jobs well and be the people we are in our families, in our friendship groups, wherever, well, unless we have that social and emotional battery to do that properly. If we're running on low battery, you can't keep going before it starts harming you and harming other people.
May I put another spin on that?
Of course.
Being the foreigner that I am, I'm like, you take your cultural sensitivity into work with you.
Yeah.
Okay, we have to be really aware of that. And for us immigrants, I'm generalizing perhaps, but we have to work extra hard. And we have to show that we're resilient. And for me, that was one of my things, that I needed to be extra resilient in the face of challenges. Because my challenges are very different to anybody else's challenges. That is something that we don't talk about. Yeah? So I'm here to talk about what we don't talk about. These are one of the things that we need to become really aware of, that people take their cultural sensitivities into work. And by that, I don't mean just because I'm from a different country. You know, people who live in the north have very different cultural background to people who live in the south of England, for example. That is also cultural, So we have to be really aware of that, and again understand and appreciate that we have that, we take that in, can't take that away. We are made of our experiences, our patterns and preferences are there. However, how much of that are we using as an excuse to do what we do? So the question isn't where our patterns and preferences came from. The question is, are we using them as an excuse as we're making decisions and choices, and how can we become more aware so that we're more aligned? That alignment for me is missing.
Brilliant. Well, we've both already had a conversation. Hopefully you'll be up for doing another single episode each.
Absolutely.
So yeah, this is like a little taster, a little nibble for people to digest prior to hopefully an hour-long session with each of you. So thank you so
Perfect.
much.
Thank you for having
Thank you very
us.
much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Ta-da!